Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the center stage here at the IME West event, day one. We're so glad to have you here today. Just a couple of reminders for this afternoon. At 3:30 in the expo hall, we do have our beer crawl. So for those of you interested in a cold beverage, there are some select exhibitors in there who are hosting said cold beverages. So please find your way in there and enjoy some time. Also at 5 o'clock this afternoon, out on the Grand Plaza is our opening reception. We have the 80s band here tonight, so it should be really fun. And we're excited to host them this year. So please join us for the welcome reception. It's open to everyone. And with that, I would like to introduce our next panel. The topic is MedTech manufacturers, the critical contributors to new product innovation and diagnostics. And we have three presenters here today: Colin Potter, Vanessa Kelchner, and Valerie Day. And with that, I would like you to welcome them, and I'm going to turn it over to Colin.
Thank you very much, Laurie. So just a little bit of background on myself. So I'm a 30-plus year veteran of medical device development and manufacturing, and have had one foot in both camps. So that's the innovation of development and the predictability of manufacturing. So what we're exploring today is how do we get more value from your manufacturers looking at innovation. So that's partly what we're looking at. So what's the extra value you get? But a little bit of an introduction from me, and now over to Vanessa for a little bit of background.
Thanks, Colin. My name is Vanessa Kelchner. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Acadium Life Sciences. I head up our manufacturing, QC, QA, and logistics, and I'm also responsible for execution on our corporate strategy on a daily basis. At Acadium, we make microbubbles. They're buoyant particles for biological separations.
And Valerie.
Also about 30 years in the medical device industry in roles spanning engineering, operations, and product development. And it's a pleasure to be here to discuss this very provocative topic.
And just to be really clear, we're not talking today about your manufacturers making things up and being innovative on the fly. No, we all expect the manufacturing element of the business to be predictable. It needs to be predictable, improve process, and deliver what we'd expect, cost reductions. What we're really talking about is, can you expect more from your manufacturer? Can you expect them to be innovative? There are some elements and insights that manufacturers have that can aid that innovation process, and then coupled with the right organisation that has the innovative capabilities, then you can get more from them. So I think I'd start initially by just asking the question, so is it reasonable that we should expect more from our contract manufacturers related to next generation products and innovation? And with that, I'll throw to Vanessa to pass some comments on that.
Sure. So I actually think it's very beneficial. When we looked for a company to engage with, we looked for somebody that was willing to engage with us from design to development to manufacturing. And that's because we're an early stage company, and having manufacturing that is a source of innovation is very helpful to us. The manufacturers are the ones that are very closely engaged with suppliers. So they have a deep knowledge of the materials that we would be using in our product. So it's not only for affordable production, but there's also the opportunity to gain some performance advantages too with our product. And so on the other part of this too is that they also get to know us, they get to know our product, and they get to know our customers. So when they look at those materials, taking all that knowledge with them, they're able to select materials that do convey that performance advantage. So in a lot of ways, it's not just the affordable production, but also a performance advantage that we would have over our competitors.
Thanks, Vanessa. And Valerie, is it a fair question?
Absolutely. So innovation certainly has not traditionally been one of the skill sets we're looking for in our manufacturer, but I would definitely say it's a huge benefit to find a partner that offers both the manufacturing core competencies, the supply chain, but also is able to support a modernization project or a user interface improvement or an industrial design improvement. I do think it's very important that in manufacturing we have the rigorous discipline, and that there needs to be a silo between the manufacturing group and the engineering and design and innovation team, that you might do a request for proposal for a statement of work for product improvements once you're after design stage, because we are a regulated environment. Everything needs to be under careful change control, careful assessment of what V&V and regression and clinical testing might be needed. But it is certainly ideal to partner with a company that can support those kinds of improvements and also bid on your next generation device, which I think is ideal to have a long-term view of who you select for your manufacturing partner.
Thanks, Phil. And so if you look at it, so how do you engage or encourage your contract manufacturing organization to be innovative? Is it, we need you to do something different? Do you expect improvements from them? Do you expect those suggestions? How would you engage them to be more innovative?
So actually, they engaged us, which was great. The manufacturing engineer that is working with our design and development team, he has a very keen eye towards what we're developing. So he's already looking at on whether or not this is something that is scalable for manufacturing. Can it readily be sterilized? All very important things for us, so that we can, once we get to manufacturing, we can just take off with the manufacturing and not worry about any changes during that process. And he's also looking at the materials and understanding, like I mentioned, our customers and what our product does, and paying attention to that when selecting the materials to work with early on.
Thanks, Vanessa. And Val?
Well, I want both. We just transferred a medical device from one manufacturer who was shutting down their facility to a new manufacturer. And for that, we had a very tight schedule, and I needed to transfer it with no changes, no suggestions for innovation, just meet our schedule and transfer as is. But now that it's transferred into manufacturing, we are starting to discuss enhancements, including refreshing the enclosure, adding additional connectivity features, and making improvements that we are aware of. And so to have that manufacturer be able to support both the rigorous manufacturing under careful procedures and testing and the regulations around manufacturing, but also have a team that can support enhancements and improvements all within the same organization, and then cut those in a controlled manner to manufacturing, is very beneficial for us.
Thanks, Phil. Are there any particular frameworks, structures, co-location, any mechanisms that you would envisage would be more able to facilitate innovation? Vanessa?
Sure. So as Valerie was saying, once we get to manufacturing, that has to be very regulated for us and controlled, and we don't want those changes to occur. But during the manufacturing process, inherently, some things are going to arise that you do need that innovation, some changes to occur. But then that's for us a re-verification, another cycle in manufacturing. So I don't want to say that we can't not innovate the manufacturing process, but it's preferred to do so in more of a refined process.
Well,
In terms of location, 20 years ago, we would have said it was very important to have all the engineers all in one place, a big bullpen, and collaborating, sharing ideas, and being able to walk across to the next building to look at the pilot run or look at findings that come up in manufacturing. I think today co-location is less important, still very valuable. I think I studied mechanical engineering, so I think having the mechanical engineers and the design engineers all together in a big bullpen is very beneficial. But we also learned during these last 2 years of COVID that with Microsoft Teams and with various tools, we can work collaboratively very well, even if we're not all in one building or even one country.
and I think just to add, there's a recent example I've had where we had insights from a manufacturing customer. They came to us as a manufacturing customer. We manufactured 2 products for them. With those insights at the start of COVID, they had a brand new product concept. So our insights, our understanding of what they wanted to do, and adhering to those rigors of manufacturing, we maintained the key verification and validation aspects, and we're able to develop a second generation product for them at about 48% of the original cost. So those manufacturing insights and the rigor facilitated those activities. So, if you look at it, is the innovation, should it be a sprint, a continuous cycle? How would you want your manufacturer to work with you in innovation? I know Val's smiling already, so that's not continuous. I'll give you a tip there. But Vanessa, what would you expect?
So I do think it's a little bit of both. I think that it's continuous in your design and development phase, and we just want to be locked down when we go into manufacturing. But like I mentioned, it can occur in that manufacturing phase, and then we want to make those changes. We want to roll that out to the customer quickly, so then it turns into a bit of a sprint.
And we know your answer, Val. So
certainly discourage innovation to be a core competency as part of the manufacturing team on the line. I think what we're really looking for is discipline around following the procedures and meeting the forecast. But I do think that the manufacturing team has suggestions and improvements, things that they may observe, and that we should have vehicles to collect those, and perhaps periodic reviews. The manufacturing organization should have a vehicle to propose potential improvements that might affect reliability or modernization or features or things that they're aware of, that those of us inside our little, company in our world of products, we may not be aware of.
So just picking up on the features and the modernisation, where do you see the benefits? Is it just improving the current product, making it a little bit better, cheaper? Is it that second generation, or is it the left field thinking of almost a companion product? Where could you see the benefits, Val, starting with you?
All of the above. I mean, I think, for a diagnostic product like I currently work on, there certainly could be a refresh of the industrial design that wouldn't affect the guts of the system and really wouldn't affect our clinical trial, for example. And so there could be a modernization that might add 5 years to the life of the product just by refreshing the skins and perhaps the user interface. But ideally, the long-term partner that we select is able to handle all three of those items that Colin suggests, including development of a next-generation product, where they understand the constraints, they understand the way that, in our case, the cartridge interacts with the instrument, and they can propose a modernized design that will still, in this case, accept that same cartridge, but go to the next level of technology.
And Vanessa?
So it comes back to the materials for us. These materials interact with cells, they interact with our microbubbles. So if there are improvements to those materials, we definitely want to leverage that.
And ultimately, you are selecting your materials in your circumstance for a long-term manufacturing commitment. So it's not the area you innovate materials, it's the other areas around it, isn't it?
Exactly. And once we lock into manufacturing, we want to stay with those materials. But if something does arise that is more beneficial to us, then we'll put it through our processes to evaluate it.
Back to, I think, looking at examples. Vanessa, can you give us an example of where you've seen that innovation and manufacturing structure be beneficial to your business?
Oh, absolutely. So this manufacturing engineer that we have been working with, he has been able to identify the appropriate plastics, considering the leachables coming from that plastics that would interact with not just the cells, but the microbubbles. Also the stickiness of the materials. He was able to point us away from certain materials because that would have an effect on our microbubbles rising. And then also the flexibility of the seals itself. Can it withstand high temperatures, cold temperatures, and shipping? So it's been very beneficial from the materials perspective, for sure.
Excellent. And Val, have you got an example that you can talk to where innovation has had an additive benefit?
Yeah, we recently did a project when I was at Quidel where we had an existing platform named Sophia, and that was developed on a very tight timeline. We used an existing lateral flow reader from Ellery Medical in Germany. We needed a barcode reader, so we had a separate device for that. And then we also needed cellular connectivity, so we used an off-the-shelf WR11. So suddenly you can imagine a bench space with 3 different boxes on the bench, took up a lot of space, it looked kind of clunky. Very efficient time to market because we were essentially customizing existing devices. But as soon as we put that on market, we knew that we needed to develop a second generation product, and we needed to get it all into one box. We needed to put cellular inside. We needed to modernize it. The Yellery reader had one of those keypads where you remember the days when if you had like an alphanumeric keypad that had like ABC on one key, and so if you wanted B, you had to push the button twice. That's how it worked. And so there were a lot of things that were really outdated, even at the time of launch. And we partnered actually with Planet Innovation to develop a next generation device, which would use the same cartridges that we already had on market. So we didn't affect our disposable manufacturing, read the same barcodes, read the same lateral flow strip lines, which had a europium signal, and report equivalent results. So we could do an equivalency clinical trial, an equivalency or a migration study for our V&V in clinical trial. And this was a product that was a spectacular success, huge cost reduction, very, very modernized for its time in terms of connectivity, the different features it offered. It was portable, it had a rechargeable battery, and it was quite a leapfrog from the offering that we had. And there's currently about 70,000 of them on market.
So we've spoken about what has worked well. Are there any examples of where innovations got in the way of manufacturing and things that we just need to be mindful of and keep away from? Vanessa?
Sure. So, and it's to the team's credit. Everybody gets very excited about what you're developing, but it's very easy to kind of go off on the side, off on a tangent that you don't want the team to go to. So keeping the team focused on the timelines and the deliverables at hand. But again, it's to their credit. They're looking at every aspect of what we're developing and how can we make it better.
And Val, I know you love continuous development, just changing things all the time. So some examples of things that may not have worked well with innovators trying to push their barrow.
Certainly once we reach design freeze, we have to be under tight engineering change control. And so there's a challenge, there's this push-pull that always occurs between, chasing this next shiny object and sinking the ship in terms of the amount of unexpected work or unintended consequences of a change that's made without, rigorous V&V system testing. So I certainly discourage, innovation as a continuous process once you're past design freeze, but I see a huge benefit and a value of these focused, sprint type efforts or, focused efforts under clear statements of work where improvements are made and cut in a, disciplined manner.
And so again, just picking up on the discipline comment there. So there's obviously this tension between innovation and structure. So I guess just back to mechanisms of, the manufacturers don't want change, innovators don't want stability. So again, just tools and equipment and how has that tension been managed? Val, maybe if you could make a comment on that.
We tend to accumulate suggested improvements, both for software, but also for the hardware. So we're always accumulating a list of kind of on deck improvements. And, we continue to manage that list, to prioritize it. And then one day we say, okay, we have these 5 things that, would provide additional benefits for our customer or improve the product or address a reliability issue or address an end of life component issue. And then we would bundle those into another round of improvements to be cut in and documented. And I think that approach can work very well, but we need to be mindful of the effort that's required and not just willy-nilly say, oh yeah, let's cut in this new optics part looks similar.
So again, structure and discipline still required while you're thinking through innovation and how it impacts the outcomes. Vanessa, you got a comment to add on that one too?
Sure. So very similar to Valerie. We're a small company, so we need to be very disciplined on all these changes. We don't want to make one change and then another. We'd rather have them all accumulate and then take an honest look at whether or not this is something that'll impart a benefit to the market. Is there a benefit to our customer with it before we decide to make the changes? And then we would make all the changes at once.
So a slight change now and starting to think about organisations that have innovation and the manufacturing discipline. Now, there are a lot of innovative sort of front-end concept companies out there. There's a lot of structured manufacturers. Could you give us your thoughts on, is there an ideal mix of the sort of company that would be able to deliver both in the appropriate sort of structured way, and maybe characteristics of those organisations? Vanessa, your thoughts?
So I think I'm actually a fan of the co-localization aspect, being able to come up with something, run it down to the manufacturing team and see if this is something that can be produced. There's something to be said about engaging people very quickly. So I think in that kind of framework, you can have some of the innovation that's occurring while also being continuous.
And so that's having some of those specialist deep skills in the innovative side of it, as well as the structure. So it's adding to that.
Exactly.
Well,
I'm probably a little more traditional old school in that. I think that there should be some kind of functional silo within organizations. My ideal model is a company that has a very strong manufacturing and supply chain team, very, very strong functional team that offers design services, hardware, software, mechanical, all of those things, and that they have strong collaboration systems within their organization. So I want them both in one company, but I don't want them to be too loose about how they overlap.
I think that almost goes without saying, because typically you don't have innovative folks who want to work in manufacturing, and you don't have the reverse. So I think that's a very appropriate structure. I think that's pretty much all of the key things that we're going to chat about today. So I think the last thing I'd leave everyone with is the thought that, again, if you think about sort of innovation, if you think back to 2007 and Apple released the first iPhone, if they weren't innovative, we'd have a really, really, really good iPhone that was exactly the same today. So again, there are lots of things that can come from innovation. So whether it's a single product that they evolve, or it's multiple products, or it's the second generation, third generation products, in the end, it's making that parent target company more successful. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and over to any questions for either of us on the panel.
I just want to add one more word of, kind of thoughts that I have on this. I was running manufacturing at Abbott Laboratories about 25 years ago, and we had a very rigid, skill set that we look for and scoring model we look for from manufacturing partners. And my view of this has changed. I think that it is very valuable to have a much longer term view of our manufacturing partner and think about organizations that offer not just those, supply chain forecasting, bill of materials, inventory type people, but also are in touch with what's happening in the bigger world. They're in touch with new technology. They're in touch with the kinds of things that we might not even have considered to improve our offering. And that have those, those young go-getter engineers just coming out of school that are in touch with, the latest connectivity technology and all those kinds of things, and that can pitch us on ideas and say, hey, we've got some thoughts, or we just, we've been working on this project with another client, and we've been developing this new connectivity module. Would you like to have a cup of coffee and talk about it? And I think that taking a longer term view of the company we select as our manufacturing partner could be invaluable for organizations in terms of their long term thinking about how they build their product offerings. and supplement them and grow them and continue to modernize them and improve them while still maintaining that discipline around how we improve our medical devices.
Thanks, Val. Any questions from the floor?
I have two questions. One thing is that we are talking about the design owner and the OEM. They are totally two different independent companies, right? And how do we judge that make the decision of when you begin your design, you already selected the manufacturer already? Because in the early stage of the design, it's almost impossible. Or the second thing is like, how do we cooperate in the like financial? Because it's a kind of a cost. It will directly related to the cost. If you use the manufacturer resources, how do we apply the cost on it? The second thing is like during that process, how do we judge the IP belongings, the IP ownership?
Let me start, and then Colin, I'm sure will give you his wisdom. But I think of today's product development as being more like a design, build, and construction, and that it is possible to select a partner who can support the design phase. And if you know in advance they're going to be the manufacturing partner, then they're very motivated in terms of reliability and manufacturability and design for test, design for manufacturing. And so if you can select the right organization and the development effort is under defined statement of work with product requirements and, with understanding about the customer requirements and product requirements and software requirements. And then that product can be transitioned into manufacturing under the same company. And there's upfront agreements in the contract about how IP is handled. Typically, in my experience, the client owns the IP, but that needs to be defined in the contract in the very beginning with this partner. And I'm seeing that working very, very well these days. I think it is something that, as our thinking about manufacturing evolves, we really can have the same company be our partner for the development effort, perhaps even also the electronics manufacturing, the board manufacturing, and perhaps the software development, and then also be our manufacturing partner, and then be there for us for improvements and engineering changes and next generation products. So I think ideally it's two functional areas within the same parent company, but it can be part of one organization.
And I'd just add that Planet Innovation, we've taken products from our development part through to manufacturing, but also from external design companies. And the thing that I'd encourage from a manufacturing perspective is that you get the manufacturers engaged as early as you can, because it's, everyday supply chain issues we're seeing now with electronics. It's critical that you've got to be addressing that. But again, you can have a small engagement early that ramps, that really improves that transition to manufacturing. And again, just reiterating Val's comments, typically from an IP perspective, that from a manufacturing perspective is assigned back to the customers. So, thanks. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
It's not quite working for Laurie there, so thank you very much. But if there are no other questions, thank you very much. The three of us will be around here for a little while if you've got any personal questions to chat through us, and happy to chat. And thanks very much for the opportunity today. Remember, innovation and manufacturing can live together.
Thank you.